what hit me with Satlantis was it's like, oh my God, this is Google Maps with Instagram.
Hmm.
When you've got
Hmm.
Nostr underneath, it's like you could have an Instagram style filter on the information that's already being posted on Nostr and feed that into, specific locations. Carry on talking me through who's using it and why you're pumped about helping them out.
For sure. So I have been in the last 3.5 weeks to 9 cities at
Wow.
Nomad meetups, at little Nomad conferences, at Bitcoin meetups, at all this sort of stuff. And I'm sharing with all of these people like the first version of the product. And I'm meeting with digital nomads, meeting with Bitcoiners and all this sort of stuff. But I have found what I think is somewhere in the middle there is what I'm calling my ICP, my ideal customer profile, which I think is going to be the prime mover of this product. And that is specifically people who are location independent and treat travel as a lifestyle. So let me explain what I mean by this is nomading has grown significantly over the last 10 years, right? Like 10 years ago, there was a couple million digital nomads. Now, as we said, there's like 35, 40 million people who kind of designate themselves as digital nomads. But the way it is being treated today has evolved. And I'm writing an essay on this now called Location Independence. What does that mean? Unlike digital nomading 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where you're kind of like being a cheapskate, living in hostels, living out of a suitcase, changing place every 2 weeks or every month or all this sort of stuff. Location independence is different, which is I have a base. Maybe I have two bases. I've got a base in Madeira and I've got a base in Dubai. And I either run my online business, I've got a podcast, I'm a creator, I, work for a company remotely, whatever, but I can work from wherever I want. And I have my base, I'm probably there 3-6 months of the year. And then the other 3 months I'm in Dubai, or the other 3 months I'm in Bali, or I'm in, Colombia, Medellin, or I'm in Buenos Aires, I'm in Prague, I'm in wherever, right? And I have this ability to live life on my terms. I might run retreats. I might run, creator conferences. I might run all this sort of stuff. So this person, they're not exactly a hardcore Bitcoiner, but they're all, every single one of them that I've spoken to and showed the app to, they are familiar with Bitcoin. They have some Bitcoin, but they're more interested in the lifestyle element. They may not have 4 or 5 passports like the full-on passport bros, but they definitely have a tax residency, probably in like a Paraguay or a Malta or something like that, right? So they kind of have set themselves up and they're living this kind of new travel is a lifestyle. Like they go to cool places, they're checking out different parts of the world, they are going to different events, they're interested in cool kind of food, like all of this sort of stuff becomes a part of their location independent lifestyle.
Something that strikes me, Alex, as you talk is a tailwind for this market
Yes.
participant is just generally the macro picture we see today, and
Yes.
high taxes and the money
Mm-hmm.
printer go brrr. And I'm currently a tax resident of Australia, which you know very well as a person that grew up here. They aren't hanging around when it comes to taking as much shit off their populace as they can, and trying to kind of like figure that out is an interesting process. And so if we can hammer a bit more into the problem that they have, in particular with this Nostr lens of like you've got your key pair, and so when you don't like a client, you can go to another client and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And it's suddenly you're flicking between Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, but all in like the same, with the same key pair, with the same password and
Mm-hmm.
email almost.
Mm-hmm.
um what hit me with Satlantis was it's like, oh my God, this is Google Maps with Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got
Mm-hmm.
Nostr underneath, it's like you could have an Instagram style filter on the information that's already being posted on Nostr and feed that into, specific locations. And like my wife and I have traveled a lot together over the years, and we're always like, let's tag that restaurant and go and have a look. But we don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it's actually any
Mm-hmm.
good. And
Mm-hmm.
then you see someone post a photograph of a place that looks delicious, but you're like, fuck, where is that? And you're like diving around in old social media posts, you can't find it. And first world problems, obviously. The other is like trawling Airbnb. Like, oh, it drives me fucking mad. And having to ask, is it available? Is it not available? Have you got this? Have you got that? But it was a real magic moment of like, oh my gosh, like what you guys are building is a problem I've felt personally, but
Hmm.
also I can see is just huge. So how will you combine these things? So you talk about like a TripAdvisor, but also Google Maps. Like, how does it pull together?
Yeah, so this is where I mentioned earlier the application of the social graph to something other than just content, right? So Instagram, Facebook, all the social apps, all the social media apps are very good at using AI and intelligence and everything that they've done with their algos to serve you content that will keep you engaged. I am trying to take the social network approach, which is we have two parts actually. Let me explain it this way. We have an interest graph and we have a social graph. So
Mm.
when you if you delete your current app and download the latest test flight that we just pushed last night, you will see the whole new sign up flow with the updated interests and all this sort of stuff. And you
Oh,
go through
cool.
that and you create an interest graph. We then have a really sophisticated mechanism of tagging everything from events to places to people to content and everything like that with these interests. Then the second layer is the social graph, which is me and you follow each other on Satlantis, which
Yep.
means we follow each other on Nostr. Every single account on Satlantis is a Nostr account. So we follow each other on Satlantis. I follow X person, Y person, Z person, all this sort of stuff. And now what the app does from a recommendation. So we have a tab in there for merchants, and merchant is, we have 6 categories: restaurants and cafes, health and wellness, attractions, nightlife, and groceries and specialty foods. And that's like local markets, farmers markets, all this sort of stuff. So we then, in order to recommend these places to you, we look at the both the interest graph and the social graph.